Geek is on the go again. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek Deep Thoughts Thin Coats with me, Phil the Glacial Geek. As you can see, yet again, we're going to have very few thin coats as the Geek is on the go. Once again, I am here in Fort Salonga, New York at my parents' place for Thanksgiving, and I still wanted to get off a deep thoughts for you guys and make it here. I know it's a bit late. I know it's supposed to have gone up probably a bit earlier than it came up, but I apologize for that, but our 8-hour drive ended up being 12 hours because of traffic, so that'll knock the wind out of your talking sails. So, but yes, so today I am coming to you, like I said, from Long Island here, and I want to talk about a topic that I think is kind of in the forefront of a lot of people's minds when it comes to the lists that are winning right now, the lists and the armies that are doing really well, and a lot of the things that seem to have people kind of upset about the meta of 40k. Talking about how armies with a lot of cheap troop choices, a lot of units, sort of the conscript blobs, and now with the Tyranids with their hordes of Ghiblies, and the chaos armies with tons of cultists or with brimstones and things like that. And I wanted to talk about why I think those armies right now are the top armies and the top tier, and why they're the ones that are fighting, that are putting on the biggest fight. A lot of people talk about that it's impossible to grind your way through a conscript blob or grind your way through cultist squads, and there are abilities that each of them have that allow them to stick around longer than normal. But honestly, when you look at them, just bare bones, they're not hard to grind through. If I threw a Land Raider Crusader at a blob of conscripts and I got within 12 inches of them, you're looking at 36 shots, all of which have a decent chance of killing them. And I run up a captain with them and it's going to chew through them. And in general, that wouldn't be too much of an issue. A lot of these armies had those same kind of blobs and squads that they had in previous editions, and it became, they could stick around just as easy back then, but they weren't the masters of the universe that they are in this edition. And there's a reason that I think the Astra Militarum and the Chaos Codexes are doing as well as they are in the tournament scene. It's because of one thing in particular. It's their ability to make lists that garner a lot of stratagem points, a lot of command points. So the ability to use a lot of stratagems. I had someone talk to me when I was at Warzone Atlanta at the GT, and we were talking about the new codex coming out, because the Dark Angels Codex, when I was there, it had just been released that they were going to be coming out soon, and I was super excited about that. I'm still super excited about that. But the one thing that he mentioned was that the best part of having a new codex is the ability to spend command points on stratagems and know that you're getting something, and know that something is going to happen. So not just like hope for a reroll, anything like that, because at this point, the lion's share of my command points are spent on rerolls. And if anyone's watched any of my battle reports, a lot of those rerolls end up being ones again. So I'm spending a command point for like a brief moment of hope that then gets dashed on the floor of my dice. And I still spent the point though, and there's, I lose that point regardless of what the result is. So I don't necessarily gain anything positive or beneficial. I just gain the possibility of something being beneficial and gaining the ability for help with that. So when you're talking about that, it's not as big a game changer at that point if you have more or less command points, because you're rolling one die. So if I'm rolling like a whole bunch of, if I'm rolling 10 shots from Hellblasters and at rapid fire range, I get to reroll one of those dice if they miss. I don't get to roll any more than that, and I end up with the possibility of rerolling one die that'll probably roll back into a 1, knowing my luck. Or I can spend 2 command points to step into combat and fight before my opponent, even though they've charged at me, And even then, I still have to roll dice. I still have to try to make hits, and nothing necessarily happens. But a lot of the stratagems in the new codexes are cool. They really do some awesome things, and they do some things that can be pretty game-changing, that can really change the way things happen and change the way the game plays out for the benefit of them and to the detriment of their opponent. And pile that on with warlord traits and relics that allow you to regain command points, and suddenly you have a battery of command points that you can spend on a whole bunch of stratagems that can really direct and change how the game occurs and how the game plays out. So when you look at it, and a lot of people were questioning this, they were looking at the results from from Warzone Atlanta, and there were a lot of Chaos armies that were doing well, and there were a lot of Chaos armies at the top, and this involved the Eldar Codex. Like, you could use the Eldar Codex for this one, and it's a good codex, and it does some strong things, but it didn't hit the scene quite as hard as the Astra Militarum or the Chaos Codexes. And I think the big reason is that with Eldar, you can't build a brigade quite as easily as you can when you're just spending, what is it, like negative 30 points on a conscript love or something like that. When you could fill out an entire brigade and get yourself like a ton of command points that you can use on stratagems. This does make me feel pretty good about in the future when the Genestealer cult finally eventually gets their codex to be able to use some of that. I think it's going to be a big deal, But I think, looking at the results of the GTs that have happened and the results of tournaments that have happened since the release of the codexes, and just kind of seeing the way the armies work and having played them, the Eldar Codex is strong. It's powerful, and it does a lot of really cool things. But I'm not getting hit with as many stratagems because they just don't have as many command points to operate with. Whereas Astra Militarum, it seems like every 3 seconds I'm getting hit with another stratagem because they brought a brigade of cheap troops and then filled in the rest with artillery. Or I'm running up against Chaos where there's 1,000 brimstones that, yes, are using the smite spam, but they're looking for 5s. They're looking for 5s on 1d6. So 1/3 of the time, it's just not happening. And at that point, yeah, it's it can be a pain, but it's not game changing. It's not game breaking. I think, and it's not unbeatable in and of itself. But suddenly you add in all these extra stratagems that you can use, and you have a very potent force. The Cultists, for instance, they're a cheap troop choice that can get you all of those command points that you can use, and then they have stratagems that allow you to bring it completely back. Even I can whittle that 40-man squad down to 1, and he spends 2 command points, and suddenly he's got another 40-man squad coming in my back line and just running at me. That's hard to deal with. That's hard for any army to deal with. And the reason is that they'll have a ton of stratagem that they can utilize with a ton of command points to make it work. So I think a lot of the ire and a lot of the misgivings are being placed on the units that can be spammed in an army, or one particular unit. So, for instance, conscripts or cultists, or artillery, things like that. A lot of the views get focused in on those in particular. And I think when you look at it from the effects that it's had on the game, if you're being honest with ourselves, they had a lot of those abilities for those units in previous editions, and they weren't as game-breaking as they are now. And the thing that's changed is the stratagems. And those armies that utilize those stratagems to greatest effect are the ones that can provide themselves with the most amount of command points. So that's why I feel like the difference right now is it's stratagems combined with the ability to garner a lot of command points that are really making the armies that are doing well do well, as opposed to something inherent in the army themselves. Because, like I said, there's a lot that can be going on. And if you look at the way things played out in the index, yes, Astra Militarum did well, but they weren't as dominant. You looked at it, and the Space Marines were doing a lot better. They had a lot of units that they could spam very well, and that people were spamming, and they were doing well in tournaments and GTs and things like that. And things got changed a bit with the rules, like when they ruled boots on the ground and stuff like that. That made things a little bit more difficult for flyer spam and such. But even looking at that, they did there were other armies that did much better when it was just straight up indexes. But the second the Astra Militarum Codex came out, they hit the ground running and hit it hard. And they became a dominant force in the tournament scene and on the tabletops around the country, around the world, all over the place. Astra Militarum, you're hearing about them doing very, very well. And I think the reason they're doing very, very well is, again, the stratagems. Because that's the only difference that's the major difference that occurred when they released the Codex for them, is the stratagems. And back in index times, they could garner a lot of stratagems, but if all you're using them for is re-rolling one die, or, you know, getting to attack in your opponent's charge phase, or your opponent's fight phase when they've charged, I mean, that's not gonna have a huge impact on the game. It can. There's a possibility that it does, but it's a lot harder for that to have a bigger impact on the game than a lot of the stratagems that are out there now. So, yeah, those are just my thoughts on kind of what's kind of leading the charge, I think, on a lot of the stronger the stronger armies out there right now. And honestly, I've got a bunch of scouts that I'm now considering. I think I'm probably going to build them up so that I can run a relatively cheap brigade detachment of Dark Angels once my Dark Angels Codex drops, so that I can have full use of all of those stratagems that'll hopefully be in there, and hopefully they'll be good. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think that it's just something inherent about, blobs of cultists and blobs of conscripts that just makes them impossible to deal with, even with a whole ton of DACA? I mean, orcs can bring a whole bunch of boys, and they're not doing as well as the Astra Militarum or the Chaos. Or do you think that that what I'm talking about has a little bit of that makes a little sense? Maybe it's the stratagems. I think the stratagems are super cool, and they're a fun new addition to this game. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. And then we've got Chapter Approved coming out with some more stratagems for all the other armies that don't have codexes coming out. So that's kind of exciting. So we'll see how that shifts everything, and see how that goes. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think. Keep the conversation going down below. And if you want to support the channel, head over. We have the Patreon going on. There's some pretty cool stuff. If you pledge, pledging as little as $1 will get you access to the videos early, and pledging more will get you access to the Discord channel, where we have a lot of cool conversations like this as well. So I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. I certainly have. I have been Phil the Glacial Geek, as always. And until next time, have fun.